You can play safe. You can play safe. 20 seconds.
Shield is right side of point. Shield is right side of point.
I'm right next to you, right next to you.
Shield is still right side of point.
Alright, slow tick down, slow tick down.
I got you, bro. Keep touching, bro.
Point. We need to step. We need to step.
Sticking on you all.
We need to step. Step now. Step now.
Shield is top point in supple spot. Shield is top point in supple spot. Hugging left guy. Shield is top left. Shield is top left. Hey guys, this is Miko here, back with another video. This is a very long requested video, but I'm going to do an in-depth guide to SNS. This, I think, will change with the path a little bit, but the base idea will be the same for the patch as it is on the PTR. So first off, I want to go through gear, and then I'm going to go through when I go in perk tree, and then kind of explain how I use my kit to best suit myself. So SNS, I play as a tank on point with max con. I am not a huge gear score guy. I am not a huge PvEer. I don't really care about this too much. I more care about changing my playstyle and actually playing the game well and not really getting gear carried like some players. So this is what I have. It's really pretty much just budget gear in terms of endgame gear. I've got Fortify Shield Rush for the live patch on PTR. I don't know if I'll be really running that. I have Oblivion, but it has Strength on the Peach, so this should be full con. I stack Freedom just because the Freedom was cheaper and it was a pretty good thing to stack on this patch, but I don't think it's as good as Shirking Fort stacking. I don't think it's as good as Refreshing Ward stacking even, to be honest. But I just kind of went for the cheapest gear I can get. I probably spent like 50k on this set, and versus people who have spent like 2 to 3 times gold cap or something like that, and I'm doing pretty well. This doesn't even have like a perk that I'm looking for. Sometimes I throw on a few other boots depending on like how I'm feeling. Like these boots sometimes I'll throw on, but they have strength, so I kind of have to weigh that. And I think the con's a little bit better, even though I lose a refreshing, or I lose a freedom because I have 4-piece freedom, and that's enough for most cases. On shield, I go sturdy for slash forward. The slash is, I mean, honestly, this is just really self-explanatory for this patch, but slash damage is the key for this current patch, which is why I run this. Sturdy Fort is just really, really good in general. It's kind of hard not to like that perk. And Sturdy is really nice. There is a shield that I'm like, or a sword that I'm looking at that has Sturdy on it, and then I could drop the Sturdy here, and then I could pick up like Fortify Shield Rush and put up my shield and get a 33% Fortify, and that seemed kind of interesting. For now, I'm running a sword with Plague Strike's Trenchant Run as a 2 perk. It's better to get a 3 perk one, of course, but again, kind of lazy budget waiting for the PTR patch, and I'm going to update this a little bit. But the base idea behind the Plague Strike's Trenchant Rend is if you land your Plague Strike Trenchant Rend that will apply to someone, you switch off your SNS, switch back to your SNS, do it again, that's going to apply again. There's supposed to be a cooldown on Trenchant Rend. This cooldown goes away if you switch weapons. It's the reason why Trenchant Rend has been run for a long time with this build. Trenchant Rend on next patch arrival is not dead, but it's not very good because Rend effectively does not do that much next patch. Unless it's Void Gauntlet, in which case it's old Rend, so it actually does something. Void Gauntlet, again, very, very budget. I have a bunch of Void Gauntlets that I just kind of cycle between, but this is the one I normally run, but it's int, and I wanted more con, so I picked up another, like, kind of more budget one. I think I ended up actually buying 2 with Strength, because I'm just stupid. But one has a Malachite in it, one has an Opal. Malachite's a little bit easier to proc, typically when I'm on Void Gauntlet, so I go with that. The Opal on Sword is just kind of a little bit of being lazy, but I actually do use my stam when I go to Sword, usually, and I'm swinging with it. I go Vines. You would think that the actual stam regen thing would be a big issue with SNS. I think it's not an issue at all on the live client, simply because of Void Gauntlet Oblivion, but I'll get to that in a second. Amulet, this is the hot take I have for now. I am a big fan of it. I tend to come up with hot takes that half the people in the community just outcast me for and think it's just the stupidest thing of all time. But the reason why I'm not running health here is because health is not really giving me that much extra health. If you look at my HP right now, I'm at 17, 840. I put this on, I'm at 19, 410. So that didn't give me that much HP. It's like 1,500, something like that. I don't think it's really that impactful, and generally Divine feels a little bit better than health to me. The other thing this allows me to do is I can get Stam Recovery, Divine, and Slash Protection, which means I can kind of go aggro when I am losing my stam, and then I know I'll just get my stam all the way back, and then I could just shield again. So it lets me kind of go for some funny plays that you see a lot, where I'll go for something like a Leaping Strike and a Vine, so I'll go for a Leaping Strike and a Scream. I'll start swinging on people, and then go for a Shield Rush, swing again, stun them, drop a Bliv, like just kind of go my whole combo, and it doesn't really matter. I could be like really aggro because of that amulet, basically. Ring, this is, again, I would say budget Invigorated Punishment I don't think is best in slot, which is one of the few builds in the game where it's not best in slot. I think Enfeebling is actually a little bit better, because that will apply to my SNS, it will also apply to my Void Gauntlet, and then I go Teardrop because I like Refreshing Ward and Regenerating. I think there is an argument for Mana Toast maybe on the next patch, but I don't think it's really a consideration for SNS. I think it's a consideration for Void Blade in particular, but not SNS. In terms of like what I run on bar, I typically run Dust, and I run mostly specifically Slash Ward on the amulet and on the shield. I would normally like this to be an Onyx. I like to have like 5 thrust, 5 strike, just to have some. But I don't think that resistance is honestly that impactful, and I think it's the same thing on the next patch. The only thrust damage that's like kind of scary on the next patch, I guess, is the like Spear. If Spear is run on point, then maybe this is a concern, but I think the setup is in general like pretty good. Spear is like a little bit harder, I think, to run on point consistently than something like Great Axe. And Great Axe tends to do more damage than Warhammer, and next patch, Warhammer does not really do any damage unless it's heavies. And even then, it does not really hit me that hard. It hits me for like 2 or 3k, which for some people might sound like a lot, but when you have 17k HP and a single pot heals you for a third of your HP, then it's not that much HP to lose. And if I'm in a Sacred, then a single pot basically heals half my HP bar, which is why I like the Divine so much. SNS has passive Divine on it. It makes that setup really strong with this recuperation perk. So this is my SNS tree. A lot of people go for the Defender's Resolve, and they think Defender's Resolve is better. I think if you run Defender's Resolve, you haven't been versus a company that has probably run Oblivions and knows about the SNS bug. What I call the SNS bug, and I get a lot of questions about this, is this defensive formation. There's a mechanic that used to happen with Void Gauntlet where you could strip the Sacred effect from actually healing people. The same thing applies to defensive formation. It is a passive buff that is supposed to last forever. It is not supposed to be able to get stripped by anything. It can be stripped by Oblivion and will not come back until you drop your SNS shield and put it back up, which is why in my VODs you see me drop my SNS shield a lot when the clump fight is happening. I'll drop it for a second and put it back up like this. And the reason why I'm doing that is just to reset it. I don't lose that much uptime with that, and then it kind of comes back. But you could even see if I just do this really quickly, sometimes I could bug myself and I don't actually get that effect. That's like something that is like inconsistent with SNS and should be fixed, but the dev team has a billion other things to fix, and they haven't got around to this for a year, and they have not really done anything about it, so at this point it has become a mechanic and is no longer a bug in my eyes. So basically playing around that is really important as an SNS, and is a reason why I drop shield so much. It's also one of the reasons why I play so aggro with SNS so much, because if you're aggro on people, they can't really get in a spot where you're kind of forced to hold shield and then they drop the Obliv on you, like I like to do to other SNSs, where I just straight up bully them until they have to hold their shield, and then I'll drop the Obliv, and then at that point they're like, well shit, if I drop the shield, then I'm dead, and if I don't drop the shield, then no one on my team is getting to fortify, so they're just kind of screwed. So that's one of the reasons why I play so aggro. The typical combo I go for if I'm playing aggro is if I'm chasing a healer, I'll do a light into light, into a light, into dodge, into light, light, into shield bash, into light, stunned, and then I'll go heavy attack, and then I'll scream, drop a bliv, and then back up an orb, and then I'll kind of like walk away at that point, and they're probably dead. It's like a very greedy combo. It honestly works way more than it probably should. There are a lot of times where I'll call people out on point and they'll die because I go for that greedy combo. There are other combos that you can do as well. Just going for the heavy attack with this build alone is a lot of value because that puts a 24% disease and a 14% rend on them that does not have a cooldown. Again, if I switch between my SNS and my Void Gauntlet, which is why sometimes you see me go like this. I switch to my Void Gauntlet, come back, do it again, switch to Void Gauntlet, come back, do it again, and I'll literally do that to 3 separate people and just put that debuff on everyone on point, because that debuff is basically the equivalent of doing an entire VG combo onto a single target. So sometimes that is actually better than going to the Void Gauntlet and going for that way, which is why I go for that. In terms of like Void Gauntlet itself, this is just kind of a standard tree. I haven't done anything special with it. I think there is an opportunity to like run radiant efficiency and like play with that. I think next patch is an opportunity to also go Void Blade and start playing with that, but I don't think it's generally worth it. SNS just feels really good as the primary thing, and on the VG I'm just running everything passive. This Refreshing Harvest will no longer be an insane thing next patch, but may still have to be run just for the mana that you need itself. That being said, like this will be turning into a thing that gets rid of like debuffs on you, which I don't think is that bad on SNS, and it doesn't really do that much damage if you're on SNS. Like I'm taking 900 health damage, and that's like more than I'll passively heal basically from being on a point. So it's not really that scary. It works very well. The actual perks on the VG don't really matter a ton. The Scream is nice, the Keen is nice. The main reason why I like Keen is because Keen lets you get the CDR from Refreshing Precision, which is why that's so good. If you get Refreshing Fertility off, you can kind of go infinite with the VG, but not as infinite as you used to be able to. It is noteworthy that this max 5 hits per attack thing applies separately between when you detonate the orb and when the orb passes through people, so you can get that to proc twice on clumps if you're really good with it. It's a little bit harder for me to do this as of recent because my mouse is kind of falling apart, and I can't press the mouse 4 button consistently, which is why you see that kind of mess up. It works some of the time, but I just haven't got around to getting a new mouse yet, and I've been kind of lazy. But that's the main reason why you see me like kind of hold the orb sometimes, and I'll go for that. It's not like some of the other like the medium IGVG where I'll just kind of go in with it, but it's a little bit more passive style. In terms of other things that are important, when people crash on you, typically you want to be holding shield. There is a mechanic where that 30% fortify will apply even if you are like to yourself, and even if you're like holding your shield away from people. So sometimes I try to work on this a little bit, but if someone is hitting me and I am low stam and I really wanted to keep my shield up, I'll turn my back and purposely take the damage so that I can regen my stam in the Obliv, because Obliv gives you passive stam on Alive. It will not do this on the PTR. And this is one of the main mechanics I think that has transformed SNS, is playing for this passive stam regen has made it so that it is really difficult to play against SNS on live, because there's mechanics like I do now where I'll turn my back to a clump, I'll recharge my stam and to still have the shield up, and then I'll turn back again. And that's something that I don't see any other SNSs do, but that's kind of the level that I'm trying to play the build at, because I'm stupid and enjoy maxing out really dumb builds. This tree, there's not much going on here, but I've already talked about this a bit. I just like the Leaping Strike mostly because the Defender's Resolve is a really easy target to get this stripped by Oblivion, and then while people are doing that, they'll tend to hold shield right after and apply that defensive formation. So someone like Line God, who's on Supple, tends to just use this ability off cooldown, and then I shield bug him and he loses this 45-second cooldown and his passive and just looks like a fool in my eyes, which is why I tend to like Leaping Strikes more, and Leaping Strikes I think is really good for pressuring people, which you can do as an SNS, which is kind of controversial to a lot of other people. I have forced Stone Forms as SNS versus healers countless times, and it is just baffling because I don't really do damage. It's just they're scared from the other people that are around me, and I see them enough to the point where they have to use a Stone Form. So you can do a lot more with this kit than a lot of people realize, even with basically no strength. Normally, I would say go 500 con. I'm on a budget, so I do not go 500 con, but I think it's pretty good. I don't think SNS really has to be run at 500 con, controversial to like what people I think mainstream would think. I think you run SNS like perfectly fine with like 200 strength if you wanted to and 300 con. I don't really think you need more than 300 con with SNS. I'd say 300 con is definitely pretty solid though, just because that's going to give you the grit next patch. On current patch, it gives you a CC extension, which is nice, but as I point out in some videos, the CC extension from Concussive Bash is not affected by Freedom, so you already have like good CC anyway. But if you wanted to change this kit a little bit, I'd probably cut these two perks, and then I'd go into more on the left side if you wanted it. I know some people kind of like the haste, some people like Cowardly Punishment. I don't think both of them are super important now that there's like a passive slow when you hit someone with a melee attack. It's like I don't think this slow really matters because people can't sprint anyway. Once I hit them with this Leaping Strike anyway, or I hit them with an auto, they can't sprint, and then my autos apply slow, which is why I go for those greedy combos so much. That's the base idea why that happens, and why in a clump I'll be holding shield, and then I'll drop obliv, and then I'll just keep holding shield. The most important part of SNS is basically knowing when to pop your buffs. It's really hard to pop your buffs, and you can't actually pop your buffs while you're holding your shield. So if you drop your shield for a second, then you can like pop them, but it's like kind of difficult to time. So you really want to make sure that you get your cleanse off before the fight, get your dust off, get your oak off, whatever you're running, and kind of go into the fight with all those cooldowns used, except for, I would argue, the health pot. Regen pot, I think you should tend to pop before the fight happens, but often it's really hard to get that off and the cleanse off, and it's better to get the cleanse off than the regen off pre-fight, in my opinion. I'd rather get the regen off mid-fight if I have to, because that will basically heal me for the HP I took damage from. It's also really important to not get your shield broken if you have something like, what's it called? I think it's Sturdy Energy? Yeah, Sturdy Energy is a really good perk that you can get on SNS that you probably should use. I would use it, but again, on a budget. I've run this on other characters. I don't run it on this character because Nullifying Oblivion is too important. I have a Nullifying Oblivion piece for my head, but I think it's more important to have the extra Brazil and have the Shield Rush on the current patch. On next patch, I might think about switching that, depending on how many people have high crit damage and are hitting me on the point. I think most of this gear still is kind of fine next patch. I don't think you really need this gear for SNS. You're inherently super tanky. You're just kind of looking to get the most out of your kit and most out of your abilities as a whole. I don't think you also need more than like 4 Refreshing Ward with an SNS, controversial to what some people would think. I think you get hit enough on most patches to where if you have more than a 4 Refreshing Ward, you're kind of losing the value of your Refreshing Ward itself. I believe I have exactly 4. Yeah, I have exactly 4. So that's the basic reason for that. You'll also get passive freedom in the next patch. I don't think you need as much freedom. I'd shoot to run for freedom, but I don't think it's really important if you miss that. If you get stunned by a Warhammer next patch, it's not really scary because the rend isn't scary, the armor brick they apply on you isn't scary. You pretty much just won't die next patch if you get stunned, so there's not the issue about you getting stunned is actually not for you, but it's because you can't apply your aura to your teammates. So that's the main reason why I think freedom is like kind of nice with an SNS, is because I can help my teammates before they get hit by the other combos. So I'll get stunned, they'll get stunned, I'll get up first, I'll shield them, and then they won't take the damage. The freedom isn't for me, it's for the team, basically. And this entire kit is basically built as a team. Support SNS itself is literally just made to enable teammates, but you can break some of the rules. Like there are times where I will go aggro with the sword on top of healers, force them out. There are times where I will call out a BB by name and I will just go aggro on them, and I do not care because I know I won't die and I know they'll die before me. If they use cooldowns on me, they're wasting their time. So I kind of win that situation no matter what. The only way I lose is if people crash my teammates, and that doesn't typically happen where they die. The other kind of neat trick that I do a lot is there's often like a time in a fight where you're blocking and then you're trying to drop the obliv, but it's like kind of hard to time. The time that I try to drop the obliv is right after or right before my bruisers are going for a maelstrom. The reason why I do that is because I know I won't get nuked when that happens, because the maelstrom will eat the range projectiles. You tend to not get nuked on SNS, but I have seen it happen. So that's like kind of one thing you can look out for, but you're mostly playing your VG like you're a typical Void Gauntlet where you're trying to go for the Obliv Scream Orb most of the time. There is a specific circumstance that a lot of people don't know about that is versus in SNS itself, you don't want to go for the Obliv Scream Orb. You actually want to go for the Scream Orb, the Scream Obliv Orb. Sorry, I'm saying a lot of O's back to back. The reason why I want to go for Scream first is because when you go for the shield bug, if someone drops their shield and puts it back up at all, it reactivates it and it won't bug their shield anymore. So if they get staggered, then their shield goes down, right? And it comes back up, which means that they will no longer be affected by that shield bug, which is why I break that rule specifically versus SNS and versus SNS clumps, where I will try to go for the Scream first and then the Obliv and then the Orb. Again, that's like the level that I'm trying to play the SNS at, because I think you can play it at that level if you really choose to do so, but a lot of people don't play it at that level. That's like the base idea behind SNS. The other like little things are like, who do you go for the shield rush on? Who do you go for the shield bash on? A shield bash is typically best used on people who are not getting focused in a fight. So if there is like a blunderbuss on point who's standing alone that no one is paying attention to, I'll try to shield bash them just because I can, and they'll just stand there for 3 seconds and not do anything. If there's a healer who no one on my team is focusing, I will leaping strike to them and then I'll shield bash them. I don't have the cooldown right now, but you get that idea. where I'll just take them out of the fight for 3 seconds, and that's often where I'll force stone forms because they're like, oh shit, I gotta heal this guy. Or if I see a healer who's going for a heal animation, which takes a very long time, then you can leaping strike them, you can stagger them out of it, you can go for heavy attack, apply that massive disease and rend, some autos, stun them again, slow them down with the shield rush. Like, you could start comboing very, very quickly when you get on top of people, and people can't inherently deal with your pressure because you have too much HP to be dealt with effectively. On next patch, it's going to be even worse. You'll just be able to basically outclass everybody in terms of like your health output just because the SNS passive is being Ord Fortify. That being said, other people will be having a lot of HP. So if I were to run this setup on next patch and not have that health, people would tend to have 2,000 less HP than me. But because I have a shield, I'll inherently have more, and because now I have Stam Recovery and Divine, I think I'll effectively have more HP. The line right now where I draw the line between when is Divine better and where is health better is if you're consistently looking back at fights and you are getting healed and you're not getting healed to full HP, I think that's a situation where considering Divine may be better for you. But if you're in a spot where you are getting to heal to max HP and health will be better for you, I think that line tends to be drawn around 300 con. I could definitely see people in 300 con dropping health if they are like in a situation where they actually could benefit from that Divine a lot. The main thing that jumps out to me with that is Voidblade and Right Tree SNS. Right Tree SNS tends to have a lot of lifesteal, Voidblade tends to have a lot of lifesteal. That Divine will scale multiplicatively, which basically means you get a lot more lifesteal than you would think. The other downside to that, though, is Voidblade tends to get most of their lifesteal from when they drop below 50% HP, and then that gets lowered, so you have less HP to work with in order to get that lifesteal, but once it activates, it will be activating for more. There's definitely a balancing act there, but that's the whole idea behind the Divine, and this is one build in particular where I think it's almost guaranteed that health is worse than the other things. If you're playing like a hybrid build, like a Great Axe SNS, I don't know if Divine will be better there or not. That's something I would have to playtest, and I haven't playtested enough to have a strong opinion on. But this is the base idea behind SNS is you want to provide that 30% shield to clumps because that 30% 30% fortify to clumps. This is old fortify and is just like basically the best fortify in source in the game, which is the main reason why it's got played in general. Is because if you have an SNS and the other team does not, and you ball up more, you will just inherently win. If it's ball v ball, your team has an SNS, they had to have an SNS. It's a bit more of a footsie. It's basically just who bugs the other team's shield. But yeah, it's very, very, in my opinion, a lot more fun than people think because it's more of like a chess match than just straight up mashing M1 over and over. As much as I meme on it as, hey, I'm going in a war and I'm going to tape down M2, there's a lot more to that. It's a lot more reading situations when you actually want to use your key abilities. You are a tank inherently, so the gameplay can be a little bit slower, but you have way more impact on clumps than other builds that I have seen from playing it in the last 2 weeks. I think I played this build. But yeah, SNS is really cool. Really recommend it, and I'll see you guys in the next video.